Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Jacqueline Whitmore, and thank you for joining me for my Facebook Live. I have a great guest for you today. For those of you who are interested in changing jobs, maybe you've been furloughed lately. Maybe you would like to make a transition in your life. Perhaps you have a great job, but you want to make sure that down the road you're prepared for the next job. And maybe you just graduated, class of 2020, and you are transitioning from campus to career. This guest is for you. Today, my special guest is Katherine Lance. And before I bring Katherine on, I just want to share with you a little bit about Katherine, and I'll just read a brief bio. Katherine has been a recruiter for 18 plus years for several high profile consulting firms. In addition, she was a senior talent advisor to Fortune 100 companies such as Nestle USA, Time Warner, Bank of America, among others. She also has extensive experience writing winning resumes. And I can attest to that because she has looked at my resume and has polished it up. Not that I'm applying for a new job, mind you, but you never know when you might need an updated resume. So Katherine is the person for you. So in just a second, I'll bring her on and she will show up shortly. There she is. Hi, Katherine.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. I have to tell our guests that was it 1 or 2 years ago you came to Mount Dora? Okay, 2 years ago to train with me, and
It was great.
Thank you. You added to your portfolio and you became certified as a business etiquette consultant. And I'm so glad that I could help you with that. And you were a stellar student, by the way.
Oh, well, you were a great teacher. I highly, highly recommend your Train the Trainer program. It was awesome.
Thank you. Well, let's get right down to it and tell me, what can people do to stand out among the crowd these days? I mean, we are reaching double digits in unemployment rates. So, how can we help?
Well, it's two things. It's to me, it's like a 1-2 punch, right? So it's having an awesome resume, and then nailing the interview, right? So it's basic, and yet it's there's definitely some secrets that I've learned over the years. So you can imagine being a recruiter for that many years. I've seen hundreds of thousands of resumes. I've seen all the ways to do interviews wrong and all the ways to do them right. I've seen some really impressive candidates, and certainly emulated the best of what I've seen in my own career, and certainly like to share that with my clients as well.
It's interesting because many years ago when I graduated from college, the way that we submitted resumes was the old-fashioned mail. And then it transitioned to email. But now we're seeing various ways that people can submit their resumes, and it's even getting more complicated, don't you think, now, because you don't really get to see the employer face to face until after your resume passes that test.
Right. Yeah. And it's really been that way for a long time. I think a lot of companies have very complex, irritating application systems that can take an hour, but I think the smart companies are learning to do away with that. They want to make it as streamlined as possible, because actually what surprised me a few years ago is that most candidates, especially if you're under 30, you're applying for jobs from your phone.
Really?
I can't even imagine that, but yeah, so they really are. Most companies have made huge strides in streamlining that process. But yeah, it's all online, and there's definitely some strategies.
Okay, well, let's talk about strategy number one.
Well, first of all, of course, you want to have a great resume. I came across a candidate resume about 15 years ago that was just phenomenal. It just stopped me in my tracks. I thought, oh my gosh, I wish every candidate had a resume like this format. And so I've taken that resume and made some tweaks, and it's a life changer, if I do say so myself. And so I think you have a copy of the resume. We can bring that up and we can kind of go over that briefly.
I certainly do. And before I bring that up, I do want you to address all of these various programs that people can utilize, like Canva.com, PicMonkey.com. These are programs where you can design your own resume with colors and pictures and fonts and all of that. But the resume that I am about to show now isn't like those resumes. This is a very, I would say, more of a straightforward, timeless resume.
Yeah, it's definitely different from most, in the sense that in the top there you'll see three job titles. So and first of all, you have to understand who your audience is. Your audience is the recruiter. That's who you're writing the resume for. It's not the hiring manager necessarily, because once you win over the recruiter, they're going to be your advocate, your best advocate, obviously, with the hiring manager. So you're going to see three titles there. Those act as an objective. So as a recruiter, I can look at that and go, okay, I know exactly, what kind of jobs this person is looking for. And it's perfect for someone who's transitioning as well, because maybe you've got a lot of skill sets for a role that you actually have not filled or worked in, but it's a direction you want to go in. So you can add that title as well at the end. So three job titles there, then a very, very powerful summary that includes the number of years, especially if you're a seasoned employee, someone that's in the middle of your career, let's say. You may have 10 or 15 years, in a certain industry or a certain niche market. You definitely want to summarize that in the top. If you're a college grad, you want to just kind of put, the direction you want to go in, emphasize the classes you've taken, any internships you've done in that direction. So your summary should be very powerful. As a matter of fact, everything in your resume needs to be powerful, because you have like 2 or 3 seconds literally to make an impression on that recruiter. Otherwise, it's next on to the next resume. Core competencies are very important. As a recruiter, I can see if you have got the skills that my hiring manager is looking for. And then below that, career achievements or career highlights. That's situations where maybe you pull the rabbit out of a hat. You've gone above and beyond. You really stood out and did something extraordinary for your employer with great quantitative results, ideally. So you want to have at least 2 and no more than 4 examples of those if you can. And if you don't have that, that's okay. But if you do, you definitely want to pull those out. And then just having it be really clear and concise. Like I like to have company names in all caps, not bolded, and the titles in bold, because as a recruiter, I want to see those job titles. And then I like to see a brief summary of the company underneath the company name, because as a recruiter, many company names, XYZ company, I don't know what that industry that is. What do they do? I have no clue. So you want to give a recruiter an idea of that. Can you switch to the second page for me? And then we'll show that. Okay, there we go. If you have a lot of years of experience, let's say, 20 years of experience in a certain industry, but you don't want to list, all those jobs that go back 20 years necessarily. You can see where I've done in this resume where I've summarized, the fact that this person has an additional so many years and just list the job title. So it's a little summary in italics at the bottom there. So you don't have to have your resume go on and on. And by the way, there's a myth out there that all resumes should only be 1 page long. That's true if you have, say, 5 years of experience or less. I would say definitely keep it at 1 page, even up to 10 years if you haven't had many jobs. But if you've been in the same industry for a long time, especially IT folks have been in there for 20 years, 3 pages is totally acceptable. If all the information on your resume is related or, in the same industry. So don't be afraid of that. If all your jobs are powerful, the bullets are powerful, you want to have them in a powerful order, the most impressive first. You don't know if the recruiter is going to read past the first bullet. And then, of course, at the end, you put your education, any certificates you have, and then any below that, any memberships or affiliations. So that's my template.
Well, thank you for sharing that with all of our viewers. And I have a question about creative careers like advertising or graphic arts or entertainment. Would you use that type of resume for? No, you wouldn't use that format. No.
Well, you might use the function of it, maybe, try to get the same idea in. But yeah, you'd want to show your creativity. That's where you were talking about those websites or tools to use to create a more creative resume. Then those come in handy. I have not actually recruited for too much of the creative side. Done a lot of IT, sales, marketing, manufacturing, engineering, and all this kind of stuff. All the I wasn't going to say boring, was I? No. All the mainstay kind of, yeah. But anything creative, yeah, I would highly recommend. And not going crazy, to where it's distracting from the information on the page, but definitely show off your creative ability. Good question.
Okay, so now the resume has been submitted, and I know a lot of my college students ask me, how do I follow up after the resume is submitted? Do I follow up? Do I just send it in and hope for the best? What do you recommend?
Oh, there's a lot of things. I would highly recommend doing your research on the company. You have to do that before an interview anyway. And I mean real research. You want to find out about just everything you can about the company. Go on LinkedIn and connect with people who are in the department that you're looking to get into, and see if you can get someone who can introduce you. I mean, that would be ideal. I mean, or any kind of referral, but just do some informational research in terms of, ask them what they like about working there. What kind of advice would they give someone who is, trying to get into that department? What are the pain points that department might be feeling if they have an opening, or how often do they have openings? Just get information. But as far as once you've got the resume, I would highly recommend, obviously, posting it. I would, number one, post it on Indeed.com. Indeed is not a job board. It is a job search engine. So it automatically pulls job descriptions or, job openings, job postings off of the internet all over, from all over the country. So you can target your search to the area that you live in, but it's going to have it's by far the largest. You get the most exposure with Indeed. I would also post it on Monster, Career Builder, Glassdoor, possibly, at least 2, if not 4, depends on how quickly you want a job. So post your resume, but also search on those job boards or on Indeed for a position, so do both. Some people think, oh, I've got my job posted. I don't need to do anything. No, you need to post it and you need to search. So once you apply, it depends. If it's a government job, there's like 1,000 people who apply or whatever. But even so, sometimes you can get there's a number you can call, and if you haven't heard anything after 2 weeks, see if you can follow up via email or a phone call. There's nothing wrong with that. Just checking on the status of your. You don't want to pester them, but definitely follow up. So once you're called in for the interview, because with this resume template you will be, then that's where the exciting stuff happens, because it's all about the interview at that point. So.
And there are ways of standing out in the interview, I understand. I'll just share with our viewers a quick little story about back in the old days when we didn't really have the internet to rely on to submit resumes, and we didn't have the internet to learn about job postings and so forth. It was all through word of mouth. And I remember when I was getting ready to interview for Northwest Airlines, and I was going to apply for a position as a flight attendant. And this was back in 1992. And the only resource that I could find to research about the company, now I didn't have time to go to the library at the time because I had about 24 hours to prepare. I called the 1-800 number to Northwest Airlines, and I spoke to one of the agents, one of the reservation agents. And I spoke to her for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I asked her questions about the company. And when I went in for that interview, the recruiters asked all of the candidates to say something they knew about the airlines. And I was one of the few who had done my research. So to your point, I think that research is critical when you go into that interview. The last thing you want to say, and you never say this, is tell me about your company, because they want you to know about their company already.
Exactly. That you have really hit the nail on the head, Jacqueline, because I would say as a recruiter, I am shocked at how few people research. I mean, if you get up into the senior management roles, they've at least done some research, but many times not so much. And so candidates who really have done research on the company, know about the company's, many times on the website will talk about where they're headed, what their goals are, whatever, is very, very impressive. So absolutely.
Maybe I'm
And
skipping ahead a little bit, and stop me if I am, but I also find when I'm working with college students, when I go in and I teach business etiquette courses, they'll come up to me afterwards and ask me questions. And one student asked me about their social media page. Do recruiters check the social media pages like
absolutely.
Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook?
Absolutely. I mean, it depends, not every role, of course, but it depends. But I mean, certainly for, I would say more than 50% of the roles that I would recruit for, I absolutely would search that. Yeah. And
So
you want to,
in other words, clean up your Facebook page and
yeah,
adjust the privacy settings. That's
yes,
etiquette 101.
exactly. Because it can speak to, from an employer's perspective, it can speak to character. You don't want any liabilities. Does someone understand about company discretion or whatever if they don't show no discretion online? Yeah, so it can definitely, and especially if you have 2 or 3 top candidates that you're selecting from,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they're all good on a certain level, but then it gets down to the fine details as to who you're going to choose. So that can make a difference, absolutely.
So clean up your photographs. Be
Yeah.
careful what you post. I have a saying: never post anything that you wouldn't want posted on the front page of your local newspaper,
Yeah, oh, yeah. Great. That's great advice. Absolutely.
or that you wouldn't want your grandmother to see. So let's talk about some other points. How to stand out from the competition. What do you recommend?
Well, something I think I'll mention too is if you're just starting your job search, and let's say a recruiter calls you about a job that you're on the fence about, you're not so sure about it, but you haven't interviewed in a long time, go for it. Go and interview, even if you have doubts about it, because you need practice to interview. And you can always interview better, at least I found this for myself, when you don't really want the job that much. You're just
Uh-huh.
more relaxed, more confident, whatever. And interviewing can not only lead to obviously a very rewarding job, but it builds confidence. Or it can destroy it if you're not prepared. So that can be pretty painful if it's a job you're really interested in. But yeah, I would say go ahead and interview for a job that you're kind of on the fence about. But one mistake that a lot of candidates make is, especially a lot of these IT candidates that I would recruit for. A lot of times they don't show a lot of emotion. You don't really know what they're feeling. So let the interviewer know that you want the job. I'm kind of skipping to the end here, but So let me kind of go through my points about the interview, because I really do have 10 secrets I wanted to share quickly. I know we don't have much time.
No, I'd love to hear them.
Okay, so you want to first of all plan on arriving 15 minutes early. Stuff happens, traffic, an accident, obviously hopefully not your accident, but things can delay you. So if you're late, bad impression. So definitely arrive early. When you get there, check in with the receptionist and be gracious and kind to everyone you meet. The receptionist, anybody who you interact with. I've had situations where a candidate was rude to the receptionist, and the hiring manager found out and didn't want to see them again, and when otherwise they would have brought them back. So be gracious to everyone. Look the part of the role you're applying for. It can get a little tricky when you're applying for a role that they wear jeans and t-shirts at work. Ask the recruiter about it, but I would say at the very least wear some nice, if you're a man, wear some nice slacks and a blazer. You don't necessarily have to wear a tie, but again, go with what the recruiter says. But definitely don't wear jeans and a t-shirt no matter what. Okay. And then for women, a nice pantsuit or a skirt suit is great. And if you do wear a dress, wear something solid. It's much more powerful than any kind of a print. Just saying. And again, we mentioned the research. That's definitely secret number 3. Do your research, like we said. Number 4, bring a slim notebook-sized portfolio. Bring extra copies of your resume, because sometimes if you're meeting with multiple people, they haven't always had a time to print off your resume. So just be prepared for that. It makes you look very good. And then just ask permission of the interviewer if they mind you taking some notes. It makes you look engaged, which hopefully you are, and you want to write down the answers that they're giving you. Secret number 5 is greeting the interviewer with a handshake. Now that's a little tricky right now, so you might want to just take the lead of your interviewers. I mean, that may not be possible for the next few months, but in general, outside of this pandemic we're in, you want to have a nice firm handshake. You don't want to have a limp one. That sends the wrong signal of timidity or just lack of social graces. Just have a nice firm handshake that's brief. So that's really important. According to the University of Manchester, a psychologist named Jeffrey Beatty, a good handshake isn't a play for dominance. It's a sign of sincerity, which is crucial in an interview. And I totally agree with that. Number 6, sit slightly forward in your seat. Again, don't, kind of lean back, so look like you're interested. 7, this is so key. You want to be very brief and concise with your answers. I've had candidates who interviewed for an hour with a panel of people, and their answers were so wordy and so running at the mouth, they only had a chance to ask 3 questions in an hour. That just, that was the kiss of death for that candidate. So please, practice your answers and, to be concise. And you pretty much know what some of the standard questions are, just why do you want to work here? Tell us about a challenge in your last job, how you overcame it. So kind of anticipate what you would ask if you were in their place and prepare your answers accordingly. Number 8, find out the goals and pain points for the hiring manager concerning that role. Ask them about their department or their group. What's the most important experience or skill set that you're looking for in this candidate? What's the ideal candidate look like? What's the most, this is a great question. What's the most important thing I can accomplish in my first 60 days? That's a wow question. Number 9, when the interview's wrapping up, let them know in a sentence or 2 that you want the job. Like I was saying before with that IT guy, I would have IT guys that, the interviewer didn't have, I found out later, they had no clue whether the guy wanted the job or not. They couldn't see any signals. But I always made a habit of when I walk candidates out, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, oh my gosh, I want to start tomorrow. What's your interest level? So if someone asks you that, obviously give a high number. And here's some other great advice someone shared with me years ago, which I thought was great. If you're not sure after an interview if you want the job or not, you're on the fence, act like you do, because you have nothing to decide if you don't get the offer. In other words, your goal should be to get the offer, then decide whether you want it or not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then lastly, follow up with a nice thank you note. Now, if you really want to impress, make sure you get their business card and write a personal thank you note. It's your chance to, based on the information you now have from the interview, to briefly, in a sentence or two, resell your skills as to how it would fit their need. But if you don't do the handwritten, at least write an email to that effect. So if you follow those 10 secrets, oh my gosh, you are so way ahead of the competition.
Oh, those are great tips. I just have a couple of questions regarding those tips. What if an interviewer asks you a question and you do not know the answer? What do you say?
Well, you don't lie. You know, just well, it depends on what the question is. But if it's a question you should know the answer to, that's not good. but you know, just say, you know, I'm not sure about that. Can I get back with you on that? Or you definitely want to be genuine, whatever you do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And back to the dressing question. Let's say it is a creative career. I know you had mentioned a pantsuit for a woman, or a skirt suit and a blazer for a man, and a nice pair of slacks. Wouldn't it be wise to call someone in the organization or find out ahead of time what their dress code is before going in? And do you dress just a level above, or do you dress at the same level? If everybody wears jeans and t-shirts like in Silicon Valley, do you come dressed in jeans and t-shirts?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. No, Matt, you definitely never. So if, let's say it is a jeans and t-shirt environment, you want to get your cues, number one, from the recruiter, because that recruiter has an interest in you succeeding. They want to fill the job, right? So they want you to succeed. So ask the recruiter, number one. But so let's say it's a jeans and t-shirt environment. I would at least wear nice slacks and a blazer or jacket. You don't have to wear a suit. But that would be, if I were the recruiter in a job like that, I would say nice slacks and a blazer and a plain, you know, a solid shirt, whatever. Now,
And I always tell women in my college courses that when they go in for a job interview, to always cover their arms.
yes.
If you can wear a blazer or a jacket, that's great, but always cover your arms, because that means you're armed for business.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard that before, but I agree. I agree. It's just a little too casual. And you know, I'm kind of from the old school, and I think, you know, a lot of these interviewers are older, you know, like myself, to wear a sleeveless anything for a woman is considered like after work. You know, it's not business appropriate. Now things have totally changed, you know, over the years, but to me, it's always best to kind of err on the more conservative side, especially depending on the company you're working for. If it's a creative role or creative company, you're going to be doing, you know, graphic arts or I don't know, something very creative. Then I would still probably stick with solid colors, but just mix them up. You know, have, you know, fuchsia colors, that fuchsia and orange, or I don't know, something kind of really cool. But I still say solid colors are more powerful than printed in general.
What I usually do recommend is that this is for women. You wear a dark blue or gray or navy, navy, gray, or black blazer or jacket. And if you want to show your true colors, you can put a colorful blouse underneath it.
Yes, red, hot pink, you know, something powerful. If it's beige underneath, it's like, you know, if you're a CPA or an attorney,
Right.
that might be very appropriate, because you don't want, you know, you don't want. There's so much psychology around color.
Right.
But yeah, so that's, I don't know if that makes sense. So
Absolutely. And the research aspect of this whole thing, I think, is key. Just knowing who is going to interview you. That's the other thing that I was going to ask. Let's say that you do get called in for an interview and you're going to meet with a series of people. For example, when I was interviewing for assistant director of public relations at the Breakers Hotel, I met with 4 different people in one day. And back then, I mean, I was young and green and just fell off the turnip truck, so I didn't know to do my research. But nowadays people have the luxury of going to LinkedIn and finding out about the employers and their likes and their hobbies and their interests and where they went to college. And I would think that you would agree with me in this. These are great conversation starters. The more you know about the person who's interviewing you, the better.
Absolutely. Yes, and any recruiter, in my opinion, worth their salt is going to be giving you an agenda of who you're going to meet with and their titles. You get that in advance, so you can do that research. So not all recruiters do that, but certainly that's what I did, and the recruiters around me that I worked with. So yeah, you want to be able to know a little bit about each of them. Maybe you went to the same college. Maybe you had whatever. You've got some things in common. So you obviously want to take advantage of that.
And there's one cardinal sin that you didn't mention, but I know that you and I've discussed this in previous conversations. It's this device right here.
Yes. Turn it off.
Turn it off or leave it in your car. And I'm sure you've seen people in an interview get on their cell phone and start texting away and taking calls. I've heard other employees say that they have seen it anyway.
Yeah, that's crazy town. Yeah, I mean, have some sense. Turn it off.
Well, common sense isn't so common anymore.
That's true. And honestly, I don't mean to sound harsh, but I mean, you can be, especially like I'm picturing like a single mom who's rushing to an interview and has babysitter issues, whatever, and you're worried if things are going to work out at home, and whatever, your mind can be somewhere else, and that happens. But yeah, you definitely want to turn that phone off, or at least silence it completely if you don't turn it off. So if you're waiting for another interview where you can kind of glance at it, but basically you want to keep that away.
And if I can add a final tip as well, is don't chew gum.
Oh, yes.
And don't smoke right before an interview.
Yeah, many times these interview rooms are super small, and so if you have cigarette, smoke on you, it's going to fill the room. Yeah,
it really is. And don't wear perfume.
Yes. Oh, yes. Men and women. I mean, I've seen them where people have to leave the room because it just chokes them. Some people are very highly sensitive to perfume. So yeah, just leave it off. Leave it off.
Absolutely.
Great advice.
So you have a website where people can go and they can hire you to write their resume for them, or if they have a rough draft and they want you to look at it and polish it up.
Absolutely.
You're extremely skilled at that. And I'm sure you can even do mock interviews with people now that we have capabilities like Zoom and all these other wonderful video conferencing services.
Absolutely.
So I would recommend to any job seeker out there to have a professional write your resume, have a professional like Katherine Lance to do a mock interview with you, not just once, but maybe 2 or 3 times, so that you are comfortable and you have interviewed thousands of people. So know what to ask. So the executive aspect is your website.
Yes.
Which is showing on the screen now. And also, is there any other way that people can get in touch with you? You're out in California, right?
Yes, I'm in California.
Okay. All right. So you're on Pacific time, but I'm sure if people have comments or questions, they can email you directly. What is your email address, Katherine?
It's kl@katherinelance.com.
Okay.
And that's KATHE. You can see my name there on the screen. Katherine Lance, altogether.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, everybody. I know we went a little bit longer than we usually do, but my gosh, you and I could talk for at least another 30 minutes, 45 minutes on this subject.
That's true.
On and on. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And until next time, have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.